again that this video will contain spoilers for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, especially the Indigo Disc and the Teal Mask DLC. I'm primarily posting this for my mutuals on TikTok. So yeah, any of my mutuals who have not played and do not want to get spoiled the Indigo Mask or sorry, the Indigo Disc or the Teal Mask, come back and watch this later, okay? Also, as another disclaimer, my voice will be in this mode the whole time, it's just how it works. Pokemon is full of characters. Some of them are tragic, like N, Guzma, Gladion, but I think one that stands out is Kieran. I'd say he's Pokemon's most tragic character, and the most interesting one. He's a character that falls from an innocent, shy, and friendly boy to a deranged, broken character fallen to madness by the start of Indigo Disc. Unlike most tragic characters, he's not broken by ambition alone. He's destroyed by some underlying flaw, but not completely either. He's broken by you, the player, and through no fault of your own. A series of misunderstandings and unfortunate outcomes from events that led to this easily avoidable downfall of Kieran's sanity, and it's painful to watch simply because how easily it could have been avoided and how in another universe everything would have gone right. The tragedy of Kieran that unfolds throughout Teal Mask and lingers out throughout Indigo Disc is caused by several easily avoidable events that lead to Kieran's slow and tragic fall. Events that left me thinking, what if, and feeling this worst sense of guilt, something I have never felt from a Pokemon game before. I've been meaning to write a video essay on Pokemon for a long time, and I've had ideas, but I've ultimately shelved them. But after playing the Indigo Disc and the Teal Mask DLCs, I've got to say Kieran is one of the most fascinating characters to analyse. Fascinating from characters from books I've read, and I thought, what better place would there be to start than this? This script is divided into 4 segments. Feel free to watch them segment by segment, as this video will be long. The first segment will be on Kieran as a tragic character. The second section will be exploring Kieran's relations with other characters. The third segment is possible interpretations of Kieran's character. And the fourth segment is on my personal opinions around Kieran and what I take away from his story personally in my own interpretation. Let's begin section 1, shall we? Like most tragic characters, Kieran is introduced prior to his fall, so that we can see what he was like before his descent into madness. Just this shy and sweet boy, kind to the player, looks up to them, metaphorically and literally, living in his sister's shadow. His descent is slow and painful, rooted in his links and interest in the ogre, as well as his overriding sense of uselessness and lack of self-confidence. One fall doesn't feel right to blame on him alone. The biggest fault of Kieran's is something out of his control, and indeed out of any character's control. That is not being the main character. The main character, in my opinion, you are forced to rob Kieran over what, in my opinion, feels like what would otherwise be his destiny. If this was a book, if this was a film, if this was anything except for a video game, Kieran's destiny would be to catch Ogerpon. When I caught Ogerpon, it just didn't feel right. I had no triumph of catching this legendary Pokemon at last. I felt no joy at it like I'd felt in previous games. What I thought was about Kieran and guilt. I wanted to give him Ogerpon. I wanted him to have it, but I am the main character and I must win. There is no other choice I have. The game does this deliberately, using its own railroaded structure against you and toying at your emotions. The Teal Mask, it sets up Kieran to have a special link with the ogre, one that goes beyond simple love for it, one that ties him to the ogre, almost. He doesn't love the ogre, no, he emulates it as well. He is shy, like the ogre. He hides his face with his hair down, much like how Ogerpon hides her face with a mask. The mask that Kieran wears in the festival is strikingly similar to Ogerpon's Teal Mask. He suspects the truth about Ogerpon long before we know it, and even introduces the ogre to us through this lens. All of these symbolic hints point the player in the direction that Kieran has a special link to the ogre and is destined to be with it. It happens by complete accident. You and Carmine run into the ogre. Kieran is just happened to be nowhere to be seen. And then he comes over just when the ogre is left. Just missed out on destiny. The moment that forever shifts the Teal Mask from cute, happy and cheery to a corrupted reality. One much like our own, and as someone who's always used Pokemon as kind of form of escapism, it hit hard. It's the moment that Kieran and Carmine have their shift in personalities and roles, but I'll get to that later. The main character wants to tell Kieran about the ogre, but Carmine won't have it. Carmine, understandably, wants to protect her little brother. The irony. This exact moment of protection is what unwittingly leads to Kieran's own demise. In the name of protection, he is exposed. He doesn't suspect anything yet, but his response is quite hurtful. He assumes that you're talking about him behind his back, and this, for a number of reasons, is quite harrowing. It implies that Kieran, because he's used to this sort of behaviour being targeted at him, that Kieran has sadly been a victim of either bullying or simple torment. And the fact that he says this confirms that he is a character that has suffered and will suffer. It's the moment where Kieran shifts from being a cute, sweet, shy boy to exploring the darker side of his character. Furthermore, him assuming that you're talking about him behind his back kind of reaffirms to the player, am I just like the rest of them? Because Kieran has been treating you like you're somewhat special. He's always talking about how other people treat him in a way that he doesn't like, and perhaps he thinks you're different, and this might be the moment where he thinks, why did I ever think that they were different? Which hurts. Protecting Kieran, Carmine has set him down a dark path, but it is still not what will send him down the most, in my opinion. What really sets Kieran down the path of darkness, in my opinion, is what happens next. You tell this to the grandfather, and Kieran is shut out before the grandfather tells you the story of the ogre as being true. Now, this is ironic for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a story about someone being shut out, and yet he tells you not to tell Kieran. You are treating Kieran just like how the ogre was treated by the villagers, further linking the two, Kieran and Ogerpon. Treating Kieran like an outsider, combined with what happened at the festival, with him assuming you were talking about him behind his back, it probably feeds Kieran's confirmation bias and his inferiority complex. It confirms to him in his mind that you are just like the rest. You're nothing special. You're like the other ones that treat him horribly. In my opinion, the thing that sends his path into madness, into free fall, is the moment after. Kieran was spying on the conversation you have with the grandfather. He knows the truth, but he wants to see if you're a good friend and you will tell him the truth. So he asks you what you were talking about. He doesn't want to know, he already knows. He's testing you and you fail the test. You tell him nothing, you don't talk about anything. You only have the choice to say that. And when you leave, Kieran is kept in focus and he's left to ask, why? Why would you lie to me? I think those two lines just speak volumes about what Kieran is going through in that moment. Pain, betrayal, suffering. And it really puts into focus why he does what he does towards the end of Teal Mask, which some people have, I'd say, unfairly painted as irrational. Nothing in that moment can describe the pity and the guilt I felt towards Kieran, something I've never felt in a Pokemon game. Last time, you, the player character, your actions have consequences that impact other people's lives. With that, the siblings fully shift. Carmine takes your place as the orienteering guide, while Kieran takes a back seat, staying in his room, much, might I say, like how the ogre stays in its den. The reversal of roles also is parallel to the true story of the Loyal Three being flipped on its head. And steals the mask while you're with Carmine. While some people have branded this moment for Kieran as idiotic, impulsive, irrational or selfish, I can't bring myself to see Kieran as in the wrong in this situation. His only friend, the one that treated him normally, unlike his sister who was constantly wrapping him in cotton wool, or the others who'd known to talk about him behind his back, has effectively betrayed him by lying to his face about something he would have been happy to help with, no less. Carmine was harsh every time Kieran tried to ask what they were doing to cover up the story about the ogre, showing how Carmine's desire to protect him had gone so far to the point where she's actively harming him. Mentally, by protecting him too much, Kieran has now been harmed by these protective measures where it would have been better to just let him on the story and let him help. Later, he suffers from an inferiority complex and a lack of self-worth, and letting him help, in my opinion, could have averted his fall into darkness. Kieran says how you've all treated him like an outcast, which, to be fair, you and Carmine have. You have to battle him, and once again, he loses. Not lose, you are the main character. Kieran returns the mask. He runs off to the village and rehabilitates Ogerpon's reputation with the villagers, and the villagers' reaction as being totally cool with it shows how there was no harm in telling the whole village, and how Kieran could have just been told this from the beginning, and how all these protective measures were all for nothing and did not help. Kieran's fall was all for nothing. But the result remains the same. Kieran's downfall has already reached a point of no return. Kieran helped the ogre and met the ogre. It's too late. The ogre now trusts you. And it wasn't meant to, in my opinion. Kieran could have been there, and it could have met Kieran first. It was just seconds late. When he challenges you to decide who will get Ogreborn, some people say that this is out of a lack of regard for your feelings and for Ogreborns. However, I'd like to dispute this. Firstly, he'd loved this ogre all his life, and he'd known the truth about it all along, and now you, this foreigner, this person who just come in 2 days ago, suddenly gets to catch it. Kieran had longed to see it his whole life, and now it might be leaving Kitakami forever. He might never be able to see it again. Maybe if Kieran hadn't been so overprotected, he could have met the ogre himself. Damage could have been avoided through so many different ways, and it just left me thinking, what if, what if, what if? Fundamentally, as is alluded to by Kieran himself, everything is always on your side because you were the main character. You will always be the one to capture the legendary, while everyone else just sits and watches. After this, Kieran runs off home again, where he's not seen to see the player off, and he's not seen again until the closing cutscene, where he is locked in his room, much like how the ogre locks itself in the den I mentioned again. Although what I'd like to point out as most interesting is that his room is like any other. No phone, no computer, it's completely barren and bare. He is a nobody. He is just this other person. His dreams were crushed by you. Family treats him like he was an infant in the name of protecting him. Really talk about him behind his back. This would be enough to send someone into madness, but on top of having your childhood icon almost being taken away from you, never to be seen again, would crush anybody, especially a young boy of 14. Eventually, he snaps. He realizes, or he thinks he realizes, the reason why everyone treats him the same, the reason why no matter what, he fails, and you always win, and everyone treats him like he's dirt, is because he's weak, and he vows to get stronger at all cost at the end of Teal Mask and beat us, leaving us on a cliffhanger for the Indigo Disc. Kieran, by the time of the Indigo Disc, has gone through serious changes in his personality and appearance, and I just can't gloss over these appearances without mentioning the symbolism. Changes are symbolic, incredibly. His hair no longer covers his face, it's up. This shows that he's no longer shy, and it's also eliminating his links to the ogre. He's trying to cut that part of his life out, trying to forget about it and focus on beating you solely. He's trying to exercise his old self. No longer the shy, timid boy we knew. He is barely recognizable. He is aggressive. He is assertive. Everything that linked him to the ogre in the first place, and cut out a large part of his identity simply in the name of beating you. He has been driven mad by ambition. Even the little twinkle that was in his eyes during the Teal Mask is now left with these psychotic, emotionless eyes. When I first saw him, I felt nothing but pity of what I'd made him. Fundamentally, he is what you have made him. He's even ditched his school outfit for a sports bib, but symbolically shunning his old self and embracing strength at all costs. But change also is quite significant, because he looks in some aspects like ex-champion Drayton. We'll get to that later. Fundamentally, in the name of strength, in the name of becoming good enough, he has cut out everything. Sacrificed his identity and his innocence, all in the name of beating you, all in the name of something that just cannot happen because you are the main character and you cannot lose. He has become deluded about chasing strength, that if he can just beat you, he'll be good enough and people treat him right. No matter what, he can't, and it pained me to see him that way. Fundamentally, this is no flaw of Kieran's. He is what you have made of him. Done with character design, we're going to focus on his personality throughout the Indigo Disc. Shown to be incredibly emotionally unstable. He's caught off guard and panics the first time you see him. Understandably so. Last time you saw him, he saw you catch Ogreborn in front of him, something that he probably never forgets. Let himself forget, never let himself move on. Probably reminds himself of the rage that he would have felt, all in the name of getting stronger to beat you. Then in his battle, when you sent up Ogreborn against him, he reacts in shock and with anger. He lets his guard down. When you sent up Ogreborn, understandably so. Got over it. No matter how many times he's tried to make himself a different person, no matter how much he changes himself, he cannot get over his past. Crucial detail, is he's shown to shut people out, just like how you and Carmine shut him out. He's begun to think that the way he's been treated is the way of life and the way he must treat other people. He is now the one who is telling Carmine to shut up. He is now the one who won't talk to Carmine. He is now the one that Carmine talks about instead of the other way around when saying he's not that bad, you just need to get used to it. They have switched personalities through interactions with the player. This very instability is his undoing. Drayton is able to manipulate him using his insecurity and his emotional instability to get you into the championship so that you can beat him. Depending on your interpretation of this, it's either Drayton trying to get back at him, or it's Drayton trying to help him in a well-meaning but ultimately useless attempt to get him to see reason. When it comes to battle him, once again, he fails not because of his personality alone, but because of his fatal flaw that he is not the main character. I tried, even if he has the strongest team in Pokemon history, stronger than Cynthia, he will still lose because it's railroaded into the game. And when he loses, he's inconsolable. He trained months, if not a year, to fight you, only to lose. All that he had sacrificed, his friends, his innocence, his personality, everything to beat you, and it ultimately came to naught. Kieran 5 times before I beat him, and in any other Pokemon fight, I would have been tired of fighting him and happy to win, reveling in my own success. But that wasn't the case here. It was just pure guilt at what I'd done. When Drayton rubbed it in Kieran's face, I felt a sense of distaste towards Drayton, like a complete reversal of Pokemon Red and Blue when Oak scolds his grandson for losing. One has had antagonistic rivals before, it has had friendly rivals before, but Kieran as an antagonistic rival who's fundamentally sympathetic is something I did not expect. I wanted nothing more than to be like you. Now he's finally lost. The one he beat to get here scolds him. Comes as a shock. The Elite Four members tell him not to rub it in. He ignores them before finally agreeing to. Kieran is just there, inconsolable. Since he's not the main character, he has no time to think about it. The game has no time to focus on what he might think, what he might feel after sacrificing so much to beat you, ultimately to just lose. Sent off interaction into Paldea's crater. His Terragapos, the treasure of Area Zero. He immediately reveals he wanted it to beat you, nothing more. He still can't let go. When he fails to beat you, he once again is inconsolable. It's just not fair. He can't beat you no matter how hard he tries. He needs to beat you for him to be treated right in his mind. So in his mind, he will always be treated horribly until he beats you. If he can't beat you, he'll never be treated right. So you can understand his despair. He will forever be treated horribly just because he's never going to be good enough. It's a goal he cannot attain. It's consuming him. And goals consuming characters is actually a wide-reaching theme again in the Indigo Disc, as Briar's hunger for information ultimately almost leads to her undoing. She asks Kieran to terrestrialize Terragapos, and Kieran loses control as the Master Ball breaks, representing his ambition to destroy him, as Carmine reflects what Kieran has become. And when you have to battle it, he's standing there, helpless and useless, berating himself, remembering Drayton's scolding of him. Then comes the beauty of the redemption. As you are losing, Carmine yells at him, you have to help him. Carmine doesn't help him with scolding and taunting. She brings love and understands why Kieran is doing what he's doing. He's doing what he's doing because he's always felt useless. Carmine understands that she needs to make Kieran feel needed. Showing that you need him, Kieran is spurred into action and he helps you. Now this probably hit me more emotionally because I was down to my last Pokemon. I was having to heal every turn. When Kieran came in, he absolutely swept the floor of Terragapos and he honestly won the fight for me. It shows the fundamental difference between Drayton and Carmine. Drayton, seemingly laid back and kind, uses tough love to get to Kieran, while Carmine, seemingly rude and tough on the outside, uses love and compassion and care to get Kieran to see reason. Both Drayton and Carmine are well-meaning, but fundamentally their approaches are different, and I'll get to that later, trust me. And then comes the most beautiful moment. If you choose not to catch Terragapos, like I did, you're not allowed to. Kieran simply says, it can't be me, it has to be you. It's one of those bittersweet lines I've ever heard in Pokemon. Kieran accepts that he cannot beat you, and he cannot do this goal he's always been chasing. He accepts it, he's come to terms, but it's also depressing as he's accepting that his goals are unattainable and he's sacrificed so much for nothing. Kieran coming back to reason, Kieran coming back to being Kieran. Kieran breaks into tears, accepting he cannot be you. Now has an ambition almost destroyed him, sorry. Got a bit of a stumble. You come to reassure Kieran of his worth. You can give him a compliment and he will snap out of his tears. Also, I'd like to point out that Carmine and Kieran both cry in this part, showing that Carmine genuinely does care about Kieran. Because he tied his approval to you, because you were the one that treats him right, because he looks up to you so much. A compliment from you means the world to him. He snaps out of his self-hatred and he comes to terms and he comes and says, can we forget everything and be friends at the end? This beautiful reconciliation I've seen in a Pokemon game. The ending is bittersweet. He's reconciled with his sister and you, but we don't know what happens with the rest of the Elite Four, especially Drayton, who we never know if he was trying to help or was doing it out of spite towards Kieran. Hopefully we'll get some confirmation in the January 11th update, which I am looking forward to because it's got Kieran in it, my baby. Kieran's redemption in the Indigo Disc and his fall in the Teal Mask are some of the best writing I've seen in Pokemon, and really made me feel raw emotion that you don't often really get in a Nintendo game. It left me satisfied, but not in a way that it felt cheap. It left me feeling that Kieran isn't fully covered, but he's recovering. It's one step on the way. It leaves you to imagine what happens next, and sets up perfectly for the January 11th update. I remember avoiding spoilers before playing the Indigo Disc, wanting Kieran to be redeemed in the end, fearing the worst because his personality had so many twists and turns throughout the Crater section of the Indigo Disc arc. He came back to see reason in the end, and it was beautiful. It makes me mad that Pokemon doesn't do this more with other characters. Their interactions with the player impact their lives, like Hop, How, and N, and Gladion, to an extent. They would have been great characters to explore, and how their interactions with the player have shaped them. But Kieran is a good start, and I hope it becomes a trend for Pokemon characters to have more depth and more nuance to them. You've reached the end of the first segment, congratulations. Segment 2, Kieran's relations with other characters. The last segment was a lot for you to take in. Feel free to leave the video and watch the other segments in doses. I'm splitting this video into segments so you can watch it in doses without having to take in so much information at once. Section 2, Kieran's relations with other characters. A lot about Kieran is revealed about his relationships with other characters, and it helps you explore his character, and a lot makes sense once you begin to analyse his relationships with other characters. Finally, his friends and family. Kieran's family is very clearly shown to be overprotective. His sister wraps him in cotton wool, always wanting to protect him. His grandparents are shocked and excited to see him making friends, implying that he isn't very sociable, probably because, again, he's probably been so protected all his life. His sister has to speak for him. He hides behind his sister. He is shy. His overprotection would obviously feed his inferiority complex. He probably thinks, they're so overprotective, I must be useless, I must be so weak, I can't do anything for myself. That's probably what he's thinking. And him being so protected is what leads to him having this inferiority complex, to be treated the same as everyone else. And he hates being protected, he hates having everything done for him, which is why you're different. You treat him as an equal. You listen to his story about the yoga. You listen to his request to battle you. He befriends you on his own terms. You don't patronise him, which makes him feel all the more betrayed when you end up doing what everyone else does and shutting him off. The relationship with the main character is the main reason why he falls down the path he does, in my opinion. He realises everyone likes you. He wants to be like you. He wants to be liked. He wants to be you, because he's never had anyone else treat him this way. And notice that how everyone likes you. He wants to be you, and that's what leads to his mad desire for strength. He can't bring himself to blame you for it. He constantly does not seem to show any hatred towards you for doing that. Sure, he shows anger, but not hatred. He takes it out more on Carmine, and it's most likely that Carmine, as an act of protection, took all of the blame for it. It's implied that she does, because she says, oh, this is all my fault to you, when Kieran gets mad that he was locked out. So it's probably an act of protection from Carmine to take the blame so he doesn't lose his last friend. It's shown through how Kieran scolds Carmine and shuts her out, and it seems to make a statement to his family. His desire for strength seems to not only be a statement to you, but a statement to his family. He does not want to be infantilized anymore. He does not want to be overprotected anymore. His sudden choice to rehabilitate Ogerpron in the Teal Mask suddenly feels like an attempt to prove himself as worthy of being treated right by everyone else. It suddenly all makes sense once you look at Kieran and understand everything he does comes through a viewpoint of he is below everyone else somehow. On to the other characters in the Blueberry Academy, all of the Elite Four are shown to miss the old Kieran and wanting to help but not knowing how. Of the Elite Four, the most important one, I'd like to say, is to Kieran's character, is Drayton. Not Drayden, Drayton. Similar names, they're related, both look similar, whatever, different people. Drayton is almost Carmine's antithesis, as I touched on before. He's just friendly, kind and warm, wanting to help Kieran, only for him to seemingly revel in his defeat, as opposed to Carmine introduces rude, aggressive and distrustful, dismissing Kieran's problems as teenage angst initially, who later helps Kieran snap out of his mad desire for strength and to be like the main character. While Drayton might genuinely want to help Kieran, his willingness to badmouth him even to his face, as well as his delight in his victory, made me genuinely wonder if he liked Kieran before because he was kinder, or because he was less of a threat to Drayton and his position as champion. There is evidence to both, and I'd like to encourage discussion towards this. He genuinely does care about Kieran. He goes about it in a way that makes Kieran's state worse, however. He tries to help Kieran, but he ultimately fails. This makes Drayton an interesting character in his own right. Oh no, I'm going to have to make a video when I say him too. No. Kieran's relationships with the other characters also show one thing. He is incredibly self-hating. He hates what he is, and he hates everything that reminds him of what he is. The first time we see him in Indigo Disc, he yells at someone for missing practice and being weak because he has problems at home. This would be something similar towards what Kieran had, and yet Kieran feels no sympathy because this character reminds him of what he was, and because he hates what he is, Kieran hates that character too. Nature has got to a point where he wants to be you, and he doesn't want to be as himself, and he doesn't want anyone else to be like him. Mentally, wanting everyone to be like you would probably be something that he would want, considering you would, for a while, were the only one that treated him the way he wanted to be treated. Mentally, Kieran is shown throughout the 2 chapters and through the other characters to be a broken and complicated character that cannot be fixed through a wake-up call, like Drayton believes, but through love and care, as Carmine exhibits to her brother. That's the end of segment 2. Go get yourself a drink or something. Here's section 3. Possible interpretations of Kieran's character. None of these are my interpretations, none of these are what I actually believe. They're based off of what I like to call typical analyses of how literature and movies, and I'm applying this to video games, like Pokemon, could be interpreted. None of these are my actual opinion. I'm just trying to spark debate about this because Kieran's character is too interesting not to have alternate takeaways introduced. The first one would be an analysis based on class. You could view Kieran as a victim of the society he lives in. He's obsessed with strength because the society he lives in is obsessed with strength. Because in the Pokemon world, the strength of the trainer and the strength of their Pokemon is shown to be paramount to all else. All of the industry relies on it. Pokemarts everywhere, trainers everywhere. Every trainer needs to be strong. Kieran, who is weak, thinks he's inherently worthless because the society he lives in rewards strength and hates weakness. It would explain his lack of self-esteem because he just doesn't fit, does not conform to the society he's in. You could also see Kieran's character through the lens of masculinity and femininity. As to begin with, Kieran is rather feminine presenting in Teal Mask, but in Indigo Disc, he has eliminated many of his feminine characteristics and acts more aggressive as him pursuing masculinity, which in our society is equated with strength. You could also view this from a post-colonialist perspective, even. Hear me out. This isn't my actual theory, this isn't my actual beliefs, but I'd like to spark debate. His actions could be seen through what he does to you as the stealing of his culture. You catching the Ogerpon that he had long known the truth about could lead to his jealousy of you. You just come in from a foreign country and catch this thing and you don't know when he's coming back. You've stolen what would be the pride of his island. And of course he would feel jealous. And this often brings the reactions around Ogerpon in the Indigo Disc into a different light. This could also explain his eagerness to catch a legendary Pokemon in your region. He's just trying to get back at you for what you did to him. If you have any interpretations of Kieran's character, I'd love to know them. Please let me know in the comments. And at last, we reached section 4. My personal opinions around Kieran, my personal perspectives, and my personal views. And I might get flack for this. Kieran to me feels very autistic coded. This isn't just me trying to force my token ADHD representation into a Pokemon game. I have evidence this time. Also keep in mind, autism is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Not all autistic people are like this, but some are. Last thing before I get to the evidence, look up Hop and How. ADHD undertones in Pokemon games are nothing new. They've been a tradition since Gen 7. Firstly, his fascination on the ogre could be easily classified as a special interest. So that's how he really, really likes the ogre, and how he brings up when he's talking to you and talks a lot about it. Just like when I ran out Pokemon for 40 days straight. To see you listening to him talking about his special interests, something a lot of autistic people can relate to. Sometimes I wonder if people are getting annoyed at me when I rant about Pokemon, and sometimes when they appreciate it, me ranting about it, I really, really am happy. And you can see why he feels so attached to the character, because the character is the first one who probably listens to what he has to say. More in Teal Mask, he's incredibly socially anxious, hiding behind his sister in a social event. Something I do a lot of, by the way. As you see the story of the DLC with Kieran being autistic in the back of your mind, things suddenly click into place. 4, not knowing how to help him could reflect many well-meaning allistic people and neurotypical people simply not knowing how to help an autistic person. Despite wanting to badly, I've experienced the same thing. I've had many friends who've wanted to help me with my issues, but they can't because they don't understand what it's like to be autistic, and they can't. The autistic issues, they don't know what they're like, and they're stuck in this helpless state. Perhaps Drayson, for all his taunting and mocking, genuinely meant well, but didn't know what he would do to have such a bad effect on Kieran. And who helps Kieran the most? Who actually helps him? None other than his own sister, the one who would definitely know how to help him the most. Grown up with him and learned to know how his autism affects him. Kieran's autism makes him more relatable to me, which is why I'm so attached to him. His issues of feeling good enough or not feeling good enough, and his feelings that everyone is against him, often are things I have felt. What I'm trying to say is, he's just like me for real. In conclusion, this video I said was way shorter than I thought it would be. In conclusion, I see Kieran as a tragic, autistic coded character that fundamentally fell into the situation he fell into because of people who meant well for him gravely misreading him, such as Carmine, the player character, his friends at the Blueberry Academy, and his grandparents. And though finally reading Kieran's thoughts and insecurities, Carmine is able to help him at last, bringing a happy ending to one of the best stories Game Freak has ever told.